Good morning, friends. I want to extend a warm welcome to you today. Everyone is welcome here. This community is a safe place where we support each other in the sacred task of becoming, celebrate the transcending mystery of life, and rely on the transforming power of love. Our imperative is to love the world. Today, and every Sunday in May, our theme is Peace for All. Our focus for this Sunday is remembrance of the activists for racial equity, Ada S. McKinley, along with some ways that we can work for peace and justice. We will also take a moment to remember those who have died in the armed services. We have a lot of very special content in today's service, so we will probably run about an hour and 10 minutes or so. We will, however, finish with our circle talk at our usual time of 12:30 sharp, or possibly even before. Right now, Gloria Weberg will tell us a bit about Ada S. McKinley. Gloria, do you want to take it away? Is Gloria present?
Yes, I'm here.
Ah, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, I'll take it away. Why is that? Okay, I see it there. Okay. Getting to know you, getting to know all about you. That's kind of the words that I wanted to say today about Ada McKinley, getting to know you and getting to know all about you. And that was Ada McKinley, who believed in racial justice, equity, opportunity, and education for all. New research indicates that Ada McKinley was denied social reform and a reformer. Ada McKinley was denied the rightful place in history. And it was only the other day, March 10th, I think, of this year, that they recognized her just a little bit, but nothing. It was some little article in the Chicago Daily News. But a man by the name of Professor Lee of North Carolina had this to say about her. Her advocacy for racial justice and equity was nothing short of remarkable. She developed the idea of service and volunteerism at a very young age. Until the day she died, she devoted to humanitarian works, serving the poor and disadvantaged people of the South Side of Chicago. And this was all said by who is still researching her life, Professor Lee of North Carolina University. He also said, when you compare the work of Jane Addams of Hull House on the west side of Chicago, which was about the same time that Ada McKinley at her settlement house on the south side of Chicago, the work was almost identical. Unfortunately, because of conscious or unconscious bias, her impact has been ignored, according to Professor Lee. So I would like to share with you how I happened to come to know Ada Sophia McKinley. It goes back, and I have to say, about 40 years or more, where most of you weren't even born, or maybe your mothers weren't even born. But in the late 1970s and maybe into the early 70s, I really can't remember very well, and I can't find any records. I joined a group of men and women at Elmhurst College in Elmhurst, Illinois, and I lived right across the railroad tracks from Elmhurst College, so it was a natural for me to go over there and find out what was going on. And this group decided to work with the Ada McKinley, then called either the Settlement House or Community Center on the south side of Chicago. The program was to get to know, that's why I sang Getting to Know You, get to know the people of the south side of Chicago in a more intimate and loving and caring fashion. So we were assigned a to be part of a training program first. So we took our training, which was about, I think, if I remember correctly, about 2 weeks or 3 weeks of just learning about the area and the people that were living down there at the time. So then we were assigned family, and I was assigned a family. Oh, and the family had to give consent, of course, to be taught to visit. So I was then was given a family, and one that I would become friends with and would really get to love. Family's name happened to be Sarah, and her children. I don't remember her last name anymore, and she did not have a husband, but she had children, and she lived in an old building that was about had about 6 apartments in it, as I remember, 3 on one side and 3 on the other, and we became good friends. We really did. And it was one of those things where we seemed to like each other from the very beginning. And so I would meet with her about every week, every other week, mostly every other week. And we would just talk about how things were going for her and how things were going for me. And it became a really woman-woman kind of relationship. One day while I was sitting there, we were sitting in the front room, and the dining room didn't have any furniture in it or anything. And all of a sudden I saw this animal run across the dining room floor and disappear. And I said, Sarah, I didn't know you got a cat. Gloria, that's no cat. She said, that is a rat. It was big. And I said, where did it go? She said, just come with me and I'll show you where it went. We went into the bathroom, and right along on the commode was a great big hole. And the rat had gone down the hole to the apartment down below. And I said, well, didn't you complain to your landlord about this? And she said, yes, we have complained, all of us in the apartment building, and he does come and help do something about it, but the rats come back, and so it has to be done over and over. And I guess they're on their coming back part right now, she said, because we have them again. And in the evenings, this was summertime, and in the evenings, we have to stand watch because they nibble at the children's faces mainly. So we have to be very careful to see that they don't get near the children. Well, that wasn't a very happy story. And the other story was that the kids were all full of mosquito bites. And I said, why do the kids have mosquito bites? Not only your children and not only you, but the other people in the building. She said, because he promised us screens, but we don't have any screens yet. And I said, well, we'll have to do something about that. Well, we got together with the other women one time when I met, and we decided that we would write a letter again to the landlord, and this time warn him that we would take him to court if he didn't put up screens. Well, within not a short period of time, but within time before the summer was over, we did take him to court, and he did have to provide screens for us. So those were the kind of things that people who decided to work with McKinley House did. Just small things, just little things, helpful things that they didn't have to go to a meeting somewhere or something, that we were able to accomplish for them. And that was really, really very successful. So in celebrating Black history, I never once heard anything about Ada McKinley Community Service this past year, nothing at all. And when you think that she contributed everything so much from 1918 until 1952, and nobody had really, really seen or heard very much about Ada X. McKinley. Well, on one occasion when I was visiting Sarah, she said, guess what? I have bad news for you. We're going to move. And I said, where are you going to move to? What do you mean move? She said, they're going to demolish the building. Well, she said, and you better not come back until I let you know what the deal is. So I waited about 2 or 3 weeks, and sure enough, she called up one day and she said that she was put into given a new place to live, and the place would be the Robert Taylor Homes project, and which was not very good news because they didn't have a very good reputation. So I said, well, when can I come down and see you? She said, I'll let you know. So she called me about a week later and said, come on down. But she said, don't come into the building. She said, just wait in your car downstairs and I will be there. You will see me. I will be waiting for you. So sure enough, she was there in front of the building. She hopped in the car and we talked. And we talked. And she said, I don't think it's wise for you to be coming down here. And so I said, well, why not? You know, it's not that hard. I've done this before. She said, no, Gloria, I am even afraid to go up the elevator in this building. She said, so there's no way that you will, and you don't want to take the staircase, whatever you want to do. So that was that. And she said, we'll telephone each other. I couldn't take her any place in the car because we weren't supposed to drive anyone anywhere. And so that was out. And we could walk around, but there really wasn't a lot of places to walk around there. So we said we would just call each other on the phone. Well, we did call each other on the phone. And that lasted for, maybe, I don't know how long now. I can't remember after all, it's that many years ago. But it's just faded away. And I never did hear from her again. However, other things were being done, and I hoped that things went well for her. So this story is very relevant today, and for many reasons, but specifically to make sure that historians and government leaders tell the story of the bravery and the courage of not only this woman, but other people. And that white privileged history is what it's called. White privileged history will not be tolerated ever, ever again. Diversity, equality, and peace is what we wanted, what we want, and it should be kind of our mantra, that and getting to know you, getting to know all about you. If we don't get to know each other, to have the courage to open our hearts and our minds, to use our creative and clever ways and ideas and some means to find the path. We've got to find that path. I think we can, that will lead us to what we want so badly, the peace and the equality and the diversity that we talk about and that we continue to yearn for, but it's still here. It is going to disappear little by little. And frankly, I believe it is disappearing before our very eyes right now, today, this moment. So it'll just go up in smoke. So getting to know you, getting to know all about you is really our mantra. So I thank you for listening to that. There's much more to learn about Ada McKinley, but mainly that she was as much as important as anybody else at that period of time, just not given the same honor and attention. There was this article, as I said, in the Daily News in March, but it was short, not very much. They continue to research this woman, and I hope they find more information. I couldn't find much more, but I think the most interesting part was just me getting and she getting to care about each other. It was really important. And a little aside, I have to tell you, because it's interesting, is that we had a minister here some years ago by the name of Viola Moore. Viola Moore had a husband, was Robert Moore. He was a Methodist minister. He also was the executive director of the Ada McKinley Community Services when I was there those 40 years ago. So anyway, thank you for listening.
And Gloria, thank you for sharing and thank you for your kind and caring heart. Let's move now to our announcements. I'll just make a couple right up front. One is if you want to take part in the soup kitchen next Saturday morning, come to the Benton Harbor Soup Kitchen and at about 9 o'clock, and we'll pack some bags, about 100 bags, 100 sack lunches for those in need in that community. The second announcement is that not this coming week, but the week after, we'll have a little concrete project going on, and Jim Fuller is the man in charge of that. So you should call him if you have any questions and would like to do some work on that project. Are there other announcements that I have not mentioned or that need to be accentuated?
I have an announcement. It's
yes,
a
go ahead, Les.
two-parter. This Thursday, we are opening our show at the Ghostlight Theater. The show is called Small Mouth Sounds, and it actually is starring our very own Tara. So if you would like to see my director work or Tara's acting work, please come take a look. It's at Ghostlight Theater. You can find it online. So that's the first announcement. It'll be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of this week and then the following week. Second announcement is we still need some help putting the set together. So if you are interested in coming by and using a drill or a hammer, would be interested in having your help. We also need help with painting. So you can find, I think I'll put my phone number in the chat, my email in the chat. If you're interested, we're going to be working tomorrow on Monday, a little bit on Tuesday, a little bit on Wednesday, and then of course we open on Thursday. So that's my announcement. Small Mouth Sounds. Would love to come have you in the audience or backstage helping set up.
Thank you, Les. Small Mouth Sounds this weekend and next. And if you want to work, call Les. Other announcements? If not, let's have our first hymn.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Kristina, will you now light the chalice for us?
I sure will. Yeah, so in this time of everyone getting vaccinated and starting to feel the world open up and get to see more people, I have very much enjoyed that. And I also decided to take a what we call a solo vacation. And I went just about 45 minutes away and was there by myself for the last few days. And it just made me remember that there is such excitement in getting to see each other, but there's also a lot of important lessons to take from this past year, including the power of having some solitude and having some time to pause and to reflect and to let go of the need to optimize or efficientize or whatever you want to call it every moment to make it productive or effective. So with that in mind, I am going to invite everyone, as I light the chalice, to close their eyes, to take a breath, and to pause. And just remember that there is quite a lot of grace in stillness. And here's the chalice.
And thank you, Kristina, for your very gracious candle lighting, our chalice lighting. Now, when it appears on the screen, let's read our affirmation in unison. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now the story for all ages, Wangari's Trees of Peace.
Wangari's Trees of Peace, a true story from Africa. Wangari lives under an umbrella of green trees in the shadow of Mount Kenya in Africa. She watches the birds in the forest where she and her mother go to gather firewood for cooking. And she helps harvest the sweet potatoes, sugar cane, and maize from the rich soil. Wangari shines in school, and when she grows tall, like the trees in the forest, she wins a scholarship to study in America. 6 years later, her studies over, Wangari returns to her Kenya home and sees a change. What has happened, she wonders. Where are the trees? Wangari sees women bent from hauling firewood miles and miles from home. She sees barren land where no crops grow. And where are the birds? Thousands of trees have been cut down to make room for buildings, but no one planted new trees to take their place. Will all of Kenya become a desert, she wonders as her tears fall. Wangari thinks about the barren land. I can begin to replace some of the lost trees here in my own backyard, one tree at a time. She starts by planting 9 seedlings. Watching the seedlings take root gives Wangari the idea to plant more, to start a farm for baby trees, a nursery. In an open space, she plants row after row of the tiny trees. Next, Wangari convinces the village women that planting trees is a good thing. She gives each one a seedling. Our lives will be better when we have trees again. You'll see. We are planting the seeds of hope. The women spread out over their village, planting tiny trees in long rows, like a green belt stretching over the land. The government men laugh. Women can't do this, they say. It takes trained foresters to plant trees. The women ignore the laughter and keep planting. Wangari pays them a small amount for each seedling still living after 3 months, their first earnings ever. Word travels like wind rustling through leaves about the green returning to Wangari's village. Soon, other women in other villages and towns and cities in Kenya are planting long rows of seedlings too. But the cutting continues. Wangari stands tall as an oak to protect the old trees still remaining. We need a park more than we need an office tower. The government men disagree. Wangari blocks their way, so they hit her with clubs. They call her a troublemaker and put her in jail. And still, she stands tall. Right is right, even if you're alone. But Wangari is not alone. Talk of the trees spreads all over Africa like ripples in Lake Victoria. More women hear the talk and plant even more seedlings in longer and longer rows. The seedlings take root and grow tall until there are over 30 million trees where there were none. The umbrella of green in Kenya returns. Women walk tall, their backs straight, for now they can gather firewood closer to home. The land is no longer barren. Sweet potatoes, sugarcane, and maize grow again in the rich red earth. The whole world hears of Wangari's trees and of her army of women who planted them. And if you were to climb to the very top of Mount Kenya today, you would see the millions of trees growing below you. And the green Wangari brought back to Africa.
And thank you to Catherine Lyon, our DRE, for choosing that very lovely story. There are many more ways than just marching at street corners and writing letters to your congressman's office to work for peace and justice. Now let's take a look at, let's go rather to our offering, which whose words I will now read. This fellowship is the community of ourselves. Its resources are our resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it. And thank you, friends, for your generosity that allows this place, allows you and me to keep going as an institution. And now, Lisa Fuller will introduce a song that she has chosen for today, titled Angel Flight. Lisa.
Good morning, everyone. Earlier this month, I asked the music directors to consider this song, Angel Flight by Darden Smith, for today's service. Angel Flight is the name given to the flight home for soldiers who have died in service and are returning to their homeland. I saw Darden Smith perform locally in 2009 at the Livery and completely fell in love with his music. He's a singer-songwriter based in Austin, Texas. And since 2009, I've traveled to Chicago and as far away as Nashville just to hear him perform. Several years ago, Darden established a nonprofit organization called Songwriters for Soldiers. And he has a whole host of songwriters who offer workshops to active military and their families to write about things that are important to them. During the songwriting workshops, the music is composed on the spot. And later when the song lyrics are finished, the soldiers or their family members are given co-writing credit for the lyrics. Research on this organization shows that individuals who participate in this songwriting process have a greater degree of hope and a lesser degree of depression after finishing the program. It's really beautiful. Darden heard the story of the angel flight from a soldier, and he actually wrote this song with his friend Radney Foster, who's also a big name in music writing. And together they put this song out. I hope you enjoy it.
All I ever wanted to do was fly, leave this world and live in the sky. I left the C-130 out of Fort Worth town. I go up some days, I don't wanna come down. And I fly that plane call the angel flight. Come on, brother, you're with me tonight. Between heaven and earth, you're never alone. On the angel flight, come on, brother, I'm taking you home. I love my family and I love this land, but tonight this flight's for another man. We do what we do 'cause we hear the call. The son gave a little, but he gave all. And fly that plane, call the angel flight. Oh, come on, brother, you're with me tonight. Between heaven and earth, you're never alone. On the angel flight, come on, brother, taking you home. Come on, brother, taking you home. Cockpit's quiet, the stars are bright. It feels kinda like church in here tonight. And it don't matter where we touch down. On the angel flight, it's sacred ground. Fly that plane, call the angel flight. I got a hero riding with us tonight. Between heaven and earth, you're never alone. On the angel flight, come on, brother, taking you home. Come on, brother, taking you home. Come on, brother, taking you home. Come on, brother, taking you home.
Very nice choice. And now Dennis Higdon will share with his perspectives.
Thanks, Jim. Good morning. At the turn of the century, last century, a new progressive movement emerged to champion social reforms. Ada S. McKinley was one progressive reformer. She was a Texan woman born in 1868, graduated from college, taught school, got married, and moved to Chicago. From that point on, she spent a lifetime working for social justice causes, eventually founding the Southside Settlement House to help poor Black people. Can I get the first slide on the screen? There she is. And eventually, the Southside Settlement House became the A.S. McKinley Community Service. Now, the question is, how much difference can one person make? Especially a Black person, a Black woman? Well, a lot, it turns out. The charity she founded helps millions of people today in her goal to empower, educate, and employ. Brave individuals such as Ada, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. nudged us towards diversity and change. My own journey towards embracing diversity began in high school when I joined a community civil rights group in Elkhart, Indiana during the civil rights movement in 1968. The local organizer there sent me into the streets and homes of Black people to hear their stories and learn about the injustices against them in employment, education, and finances. Again, Ada's employment and education as the key. I marched in protest, rode in the NAACP parade car down Main Street, where I got to do the Black Power salute. That was fun. I also sponsored a Black activist to give talks at our high school. Later on, my friend, can I have the next slide, please? My friend Sylvester Barnes and I joined the high school student teaching program. I opted to teach a course on Martin Luther King Jr. to the junior high. One of the students in my class was the younger brother of a close friend of mine who was a racist. He brought a baseball bat to the race riot in Elkhart to cause trouble. Fortunately, he never took it out of his car. Both he and his younger brother learned of my passion in the civil rights movement, and gradually they learned not to follow the racism of their parents and learned to judge each person, as MLK said, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Sylvester and I like to go to book sales together. I always bought history books. He liked to get poetry and Shakespeare. Sylvester told me then, he says, I want to become a pharmacist. I thought, more power to you. I hope you can. Well, he went to Purdue University. I went to IU. I saw him once in college, and then we kind of lost track of each other. I moved to California. He ended up getting married. Next slide. And he stayed married his whole life. He was a good husband. He moved to Michigan City as a pharmacist, and he worked for several hospitals, ended up in management. Next slide. He and his wife gave birth to a son. And next slide. His son became a doctor in Chicago and had his son. So now we're on Sylvester Barnes V. So he's a very successful story for him. Sylvester was able to live out all of his dreams. He lived in a more enlightened country thanks to Martin Luther King and LBJ and A.S. McKinley, who championed the empower, educate, and employ. Sylvester and I both taught night school. I taught at several junior colleges. He taught at IU South Bend, where he won the Teacher of the Year award. So his story and mine were made possible by the civil rights legislation that was passed in the 60s. These reforms made diversity prosper after a long drought. Now, we live in a country that has stripped away the protections given to us by the Voting Rights Act, that has ended affirmative action, that has a police force, some of which hunts down young Black men, that has ended busing and defunded public education. Defunded public education. We must all fight to protect the future Sylvesters out there. We must restore this country to the promise that was called by Martin Luther King and LBJ. We've lost that dream. We need to bring it back. I used to be a homophobe, but several good gay friends of mine taught me, again, to judge the character, not the group. In other ways, I've been judgmental. towards other groups, but I try to learn, to grow, to embrace, and to help all those who are different from me. I've always been attracted to people who are different from me. I'm not sure why. Maybe I just want to learn more about them. I made several friends at work who were from other cultures. I had a good Chinese friend in San Francisco who was my best friend, a close Japanese friend in Elkhart, German and Pakistani friends. Each one enriched my life and taught me that other cultures and races are fascinating and rewarding. Ellen and I got to spend a 10-day vacation with my Japanese friend Hase. He took us to his favorite places in Japan. It was one of our finest vacations. And just be able to live in his house and experience like a native. He had us stay in hotels where Japanese businessmen stayed. We stayed at a Buddhist monastery. It was just an amazing, amazing event for us. It enriched me. But I think embracing diversity enriches all of us. It teaches us the world is a friendly place, not so dangerous as some would have us believe, but a place in which we can all learn and grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis, very much for that testimonial and prophetic vision of the world. We're going to skip the meditation music today, and I'm going to jump right into my sermon, and we'll still hopefully be done a few minutes after our hour is over. Before I get to the sermon, I feel a need to preface my remarks. I am a capitalist. Capitalism is by far the best economic system yet invented to create wealth. Capitalism is not, however, so good at distributing wealth. Unregulated capitalism will, to paraphrase Marx, destroy its own foundations by creating a super rich owner class that basically lives off the misery of the many. In this sermon, I am going to talk about how we can use tax policy to work for justice, peace, and prosperity for all. To begin, I want to talk about famous Amos. I'm not talking about the famous Amos of chocolate chip cookie fame. I am talking about the famous Amos of biblical fame. This Amos is famous because he is the first of the Old Testament prophets. The book of his very short appearance on the stage of history is titled Amos, a book of the Bible, which was written in the 8th century BCE and was the first book of the Bible committed to written text. By the way, you have my permission to use the above Amos anecdote about his being the first written book of the Bible at social gatherings as a conversation starter. Nothing livens up a party and really gets the dialogue flowing like talking about the Old Testament, or for that matter, tax code, which we'll be looking at later. Amos was a fairly wealthy farmer who raised goats, sheep, and did a little date farming on the side. He lived in Tekoa in southern Israel. He probably had it pretty good on the farm, but he got to observing what was happening in Jerusalem. At that time, because of Jewish inheritance laws, among other things, many people were moving off the land to the big city of Jerusalem. A large and growing landless class of poor people was being created, and as is always the case, the people with a little money were able to exploit the poor for their own gain, sometimes even selling the poor into slavery so their debts could be settled. Many suffered and became starving, sick, and poorer, while the rich few got richer. Or as Amos put it, the rich were selling the poor into slavery so they, the rich, could have a new pair of shoes. So Amos went to Jerusalem and gave the rich and powerful a piece of his mind. He told the rich people that their wives were fat cows. This was literally, he told his wives they were fat cows. This, as you can imagine, did not go over very well, even though Amos was speaking for God. Seems that the rich folks really didn't want to hear what God was thinking about their excess or their wives' waistlines. They had an emergency meeting and none too gently threw Amos out of the city. Before Amos got the boot, he uttered some of the most famous words ever said. He said, "Let justice roll down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream." There have been millions of sermons preached, dozens of books, and scores of hymns written using Amos's words. Let me repeat them. Let justice roll down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream. In saying those words, he brought together, maybe for the first time ever, the idea that justice and peace are not two separate things. Really, they are one, two sides of the same coin. I have spent a good deal of my adult life as a building contractor, and I have always done my own taxes. It turns out that in that kind of business, taxes are a bit more ambiguous affair than if most of your incomes reported on W-2 or 1099. When I was doing my taxes from construction income, I often received letters from the IRS and was audited 3 times. One year I received a letter, an IRS letter, saying that after reviewing my taxes, they thought I owed an additional $3,600. I wrote a letter back with an explanation saying that in my opinion, I did not owe any more taxes. A month later, I received another letter indicating that after another review of the amount of taxes I owed, that it was reduced to $1,200. I wrote another letter back to the IRS stating that in my opinion, and using my reasoning, that I did not owe any more taxes. A month passed. I received yet another letter from the IRS. This letter informed me that my explanation was accepted and that I would be receiving a refund of $40, which I did. Strangely, the outcome of all of this was I enjoy thinking about and doing taxes. Most of you know that during tax season, I volunteer in an IRS-sponsored program to prepare taxes for low and moderate income people. Over the years, it has become my opinion that tax policy could be a very good way through which we can create a society where justice rolls down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Our society is like 8th century BCE Jerusalem. The poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer on the backs of the poor. Some examples. Jeff Bezos could have given each of his 89,000 employees a $105,000 bonus for 2020 and still have been as rich as he was at the beginning of the year. The Walton family is one of the richest families in the world, yet thousands of Walmart employees receive some form of government assistance such as SNAP or Title VIII. This means that taxpayers, you and me, are subsidizing the Waltons. And in the category of selling the needy for a pair of shoes, Steve Mnuchin, a former Secretary of the Treasury, was able to take the money from the credit default swaps the US taxpayers made good on through the bank bailouts of 2009 and buy up thousands of foreclosed on homes, making millions of dollars in the process, while thousands of families faced homelessness. Let's imagine now that Amos is not an 8th century farmer from Dakota, but a 21st century tax attorney and CPA from Chicago, who happens to be a single mother, Black, and a Unitarian Universalist. What might she say to us? I think she would say that we need to change the tax code to rig the system a little less for the rich and give the poor a deserved boost. She might add that money is power and that the rich and powerful people are the ones who do the rigging. She might also say, let's make taxation fair so that our society can be strong, safe, and peaceful for everyone. A society where everyone has a chance to succeed. She might also add that capitalism has become our golden calf, and many of us are immorally rich. Being rich, especially if we have gained from the systemic exploitation of the poor, makes us more susceptible to the sins of excess, indifference, and the justifying of one's wealth as a product of being a cut above the common person. She might close her speech by saying something like, our mandate is to love the world. One of the ways we can do that is to remodel tax policy so that everyone has a chance at an economically sound life and contribute to solving the big problems that our society is currently facing. Okay, that's how I like to imagine Amos. Let's start out with some graphs to help us understand the situation before we start talking taxes. And Rachel, you can show that first graph and leave it up until I call for it to come down. The man in the corner of the graph is Dan Graff, director of the Higgins Labor Program at Notre Dame, giving a lecture on the economic importance of unionized labor. Dan has spoken here on that topic. In this graph published by the National Bureau of Economic Research, we see that only 5% of the population of this country own 2/3 of the wealth. What is not explicitly shown in this graph is that this kind of wealth inequality destabilizes society. Too much wealth in the hands of too few is an indicator of the exploitation of the many who are not receiving a fair share of the rewards from the goods and services that they, through their labor, are producing. It is also seriously in conflict with our UU principles. The burden of inequality falls especially hard on women and people of color. This undemocratic imbalance of power shakes out in our tax code, which favors money made from having wealth. This is why we need to raise the top marginal income tax to something like 75% of any annual income earned over $5 million. Start taxing stock trades, create a wealth tax, at least 1% per annum for individuals with wealth that exceeds $50 million. Adjust the estate tax so that too much money and power does not just slip to another generation that has not earned it. Raise the corporate tax rate to at least 50% and create stiff penalties for offshoring corporate profits. Rachel, please take the slide down. This sermon is about justice, which, that's by way of footnote, this sermon is about justice, which means empowering people. One of the best ways to empower people politically and economically is through organized labor. I won't go over how the unions have declined from the last 40 years of anti-labor legislation. I do, however, have a graph that clearly shows that when much of our labor force is unionized, that the wealth distribution is greatly enhanced in favor of more Americans. In this graph put out by the Economic Policy Institute, you can plainly see that when unions are strong, ordinary people like you and me acquire a greater share of the wealth. This creates more prosperity and is good for both labor and business. It is good for democracy, and it is equally good for women and people of color. It is also good for wealthy people because everyone has more money in their pockets to spend on goods and services, plus the rich do not have to hide from themselves their feelings of guilt from exploiting the rest of us. End of footnote. Rachel, you can take that slide down. By way of a second footnote, another thing we could do to encourage equality is bring our minimum wage up to 1970s level, which would be about $23 an hour in 2021 terms. End of second footnote. Okay, let's get down into the nitty-gritty of how the tax code could be reformed for ordinary people like you and me. I hope to show you that tax policy is a very good way to lift people out of poverty, encourage racial equality, lift women out of wage suppression, and promote true democracy. Let's look first at the earned income tax credit for low and moderate income people. This is already a very strong refundable credit, which means that you can receive the credit even if you do not have a tax debt to offset it. The income ceiling, which is currently $55,952, should be raised to $100,000, and the credit should be extended to resident aliens as long as they have an ITIN, or individual taxpayer identification number. This would encourage undocumented people to get into the system so that they can be folded into and contribute in more meaningful ways to the economy. Appropriate immigration reforms would, of course, have to be made prior to this. Another strong tax credit that can be used to temper the excesses of capitalism is the child tax credit, a credit that is available if you are supporting an underage child or underage children. This credit should be expanded by moving the income ceiling for eligibility from $75,000 to $100,000, and by increasing the credit from $1,400 to $3,500. It should also be made fully refundable. This would make a great deal of strain off the working parents, especially working mothers, and most helpful for minority families. Another tax credit that should be remodeled to make society more equitable is the Child Independent Care Credit, which is used to reimburse daycare expenses for working parents. This refundable credit could be expanded beyond its current $1,000 ceiling to $3,000 per child. Again, this would have a profound effect on working mothers and families of colors with small children. The above are tax credits that already exist. Here are a couple that don't exist but should. Most states have tax credits for rents paid on housing and on property taxes paid for personal homes. These credits should be kept in place at the state level and expanded to the federal level. This would encourage home ownership for younger people and reduce the level of evictions for those that rent. The federal credit would be prorated and capped out on homes valued above $200,000 and rented properties where rents exceeded $15,000 a year. There's one final adjustment I would make to the tax code. It is my opinion that we as a people and as a nation are never going to heal from the ravages of 400 years of racism unless we make amends to Black Americans who come from slavery. Black households on the average hold only a nickel's worth of wealth for every dollar's worth of wealth white households own. Let me read that again. Black households on the average hold only a nickel's worth of wealth for every dollar of wealth white households end. This disparity is the result of centuries of racism. It is, however, a wrong that can be righted through tax policy. I am proposing a refundable credit, a negative income tax really, for Americans who are descendants of slaves. I further propose that this credit have a lifetime of 40 years, and that is 2 generations, and be tied to and equal to the individual payer's earned income credit. Granted, it would be a nightmare to administer, yet it is necessary for the health of our national soul and to make reparations. This is how I would use the tax code to let justice roll down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Rachel, please play the hymn from the Pullen Memorial Baptist Church. Observe in the hymn one of the examples of how Amos's words have been woven into the song. Are you hymn, we'll build the land, also uses Amos's words. Also, please observe the wonderful way the Pullen congregation has blended the feminine into the Christ symbol as you listen to the hymn.
Chalice today, just an invitation to take another breath and close your eyes, embrace the stillness.
Thank you, Kristina. And now our musical benediction. Go in peace, friends, and thank you everyone for coming today. And if you would like, and I hope you do, let's stick around and talk a little bit about the service in our breakout rooms and circle talks.